but for these caps, Connecticut would be in $150 million deficit.
All right, do me a favor, Vinny. I don't mean to interrupt you, but what I'd like you to do, just for the sake of some of our listeners, maybe even some of our newer listeners, because we're getting more and more new listeners every day, and that is, could you explain the guardrails? We just assume, you and I assume, because we know, being up there, we know what that means. But there are people who just hear that all the time and have no idea. What do guardrails mean? So go ahead, take a few minutes.
One is our spending cap, which says you can only spend a certain amount of money every year. Sort of think of it's gauged toward inflation. So it might be 3%, and you can't spend any additional money beyond that percentage. Then we have a revenue cap, which says we're not going to budget all our revenue. We're going to create a contingency fund, and that's 1.25%. So that puts money away just in case we see a downturn in revenue like we did this year. Mm-hmm. We eat into the contingency rather than having to cut programs. The third cap, which is one of the most important caps, is our volatility cap, which Connecticut gets a lot of money from the stock market. And so rather dictating a budget that's tied to a very volatile stock market that can earn 10% in 1 year, 20% in the next, 2% in the third year, we take a 5-year average of the performance of the stock market, and we budget that 5-year average of revenue that comes in. So it sort of takes the cream off the top and puts that away into savings. And it's a way to make sure we're not overspending our revenue, essentially. And those three caps have worked well for us.
Right. And those are the guardrails. And Democrats actually want to spend more money, and they're frustrated by the governor and his budget, and as well as the guardrails.
And the reality is, so our budget increases spending by 7%. Here's the problem with the Democrats. They want to spend more. They passed a proposal to give illegal immigrants Medicaid, health care in Connecticut. In the first year of implementation, which was last year, it was budgeted at $7 million. It is coming in at over $30 million. So they want to create these programs that have no caps of their own, that end up spending too much money, and then they want to spend more and say we don't have enough. When they passed the minimum wage increase and tied it to inflation, we're now seeing minimum wage increases every single year. And so our nonprofit providers no longer have enough money to pay their workers and run their programs. So now the nonprofit providers need more money. These guys they set the fires and then try to put out those fires and be a hero. And the reality is these guys need to stop setting fires. And that's what the cap is doing. It's not letting them set a fire, put it out, and take credit for it.
What about a state? Could there be a proposal to amend the state constitution to protect these fiscal guardrails? I don't mean to keep going back there, but it's so key in order to,
That is one of the House Republican proposals. Oh. What was funny is, the speaker's reaction was, well, then why would we legislate? You're taking our job away from us if you're putting it in the Constitution. Well, first off, let the voters decide whether or not they want these guardrails in the Constitution and taken away from Democrats. But secondly, they're okay with going in and amending the Constitution for early voting, for no excuse absentee voting. I'm hearing they want a constitutional amendment on abortion. They had that last year to enshrine that in the Constitution. But somehow putting the fiscal guardrails into the Constitution, they have a philosophical problem with that because it ties their hands. It's really hypocritical. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation.